Hello, I'm Robin Lichetti, editor of Hypertext, and if the background looks familiar, that's because we're at the Cape Town International Convention Center for Africa Tech Festival 2025. It's when the continent's leaders in IT, ICT, telecoms all descend on the mother city to discuss plans for the future and how the technology industry is shaping up. I'm joined today by Hasnain Motlaka, the Chief Commercial Officer at Telkom Business. So firstly, Hasnain, thank you for joining me. We do appreciate you taking the time to chat. So I think for people that aren't aware of kind of what you're overseeing at Telkom Business, what is your remit there?
So Telkom Business is the largest integrated connectivity solutions provider for the enterprise market, consisting from SMME, medium-sized businesses, enterprise, as well as public sector.
And as far as your role is concerned?
So currently I'm the Chief Commercial Officer, so I head up the segment as a whole, looking after that particular, the business, a B2B segment in terms of connectivity, and obviously value-added services above that as well.
Sure thing. And obviously we had Africa Tech Festival, perhaps kind of the significance of the event itself, Telkom's involvement, what does it mean for the company?
Given that it's the premier ICT event on the continent, Telkom's been involved either through one of its subsidiaries, OpenServe BCX, or directly through Telkom Business or Telkom Consumer. We've been involved over the last 2 decades in the event. We find it very fruitful in terms of engaging with peers in the industry, customers, as well as partners of ours. So it's fruitful in the sense it gets everybody to actually coalesce into one spot at one point in the time.
Great stuff. And you mentioned that kind of collaboration, those discussions. It's only day one, but kind of what have those early discussions kind of been centered around? What have you been excited to talk about with others in the industry?
So the first one is probably yesterday we spent with the OpenServe hosted event, WBBA, Broadband for Africa. Actually, how do we actually continue to foster to grow broadband and actually achieve those penetration levels that we see elsewhere in the world, in Africa as well? Because broadband has proven to be an economic multiplier if it is deployed across communities that have access to broadband at a relatively comparable price, and actually a value compelling price. So we continue to drive that aspect, and that's quite pleasing to see that, because given that Telkom its legacy is actually in the fixed domain, and that there's a demand popping up from in terms of not just from consumers but from business as well, to actually have seamless connectivity. And as we see AI and the data center hosting explode across the world, Africa cannot be afforded to be left behind. And unfortunately, you can't do all of that through wireless. It has to be done through fixed fiber connectivity.
Yeah, obviously AI is the big talking point around a lot of tech conferences at the moment. What kind of Telkom Business is kind of thinking around it, or what's its view at the moment in terms of AI in South Africa? Because it seems like the first couple of years it was people trying to figure out where exactly it played a role. What is Telkom Business finding?
So we see our role in 2 ways. 3 maybe, let's add. So in terms of basic connectivity, without basic fixed connectivity, fibered up connectivity, AI needs that latency, it needs that speed to actually produce and compute, store and compute in terms from an AI perspective. It needs also access to the cloud, or the hyperscalers deploying into the country, as well as Telkom has its PCX1 cloud. You need access to the cloud. And then the third one is probably just the ability to actually spread the benefit of it across the communities. You know, there's a social aspect to it. You've got to be very conscious and intentional that a country and a continent, we are not left behind in this race. If you see billions being spent across the world, we'll never be able to spend equivalent in terms of data centers and actually the compute capability, but we should have access to it, and access is connectivity based.
Understood. So would it be fair to say that Telkom Business is building and creating with AI in mind?
Definitely 100%, because we're finding a lot of our customers are sort of finding their own path in terms of what AI means for them in their world. And the starting point has to be the ability to actually connect, the ability to actually host, the ability to actually have access to these facilities across the world. So we see ourselves as basically just at the basic level. Just provide everything on for now. And then you start layering in the cloud-based, start layering your own compute, your ability, your own private AI tools, but you still need basic. The other element is we're looking at Telkom to be able to be the significant provider of edge data centers. So we have over 2,000 exchange buildings, and as technology miniaturizes, the use of the space in those buildings becomes less and less. So now currently those buildings have access to power, they have access to space inside the building, they have access to cooling, which is basically a data center requirement. So that gives us capability as Telkom and Telkom Business to actually offer these space and the ability to actually host. And then more importantly, we need to start thinking about data sovereignty. It's very easy to put stuff in the cloud, but you don't know where it is in the cloud. So for us, that gives an element of security from a data sovereignty, latency, and access to your data in the local premises.
Understood. You kind of mentioned the WBBA forum yesterday. One of the big messages there was kind of going solo, going as a group, kind of
Yes.
how well you can do things. What have partners like Huawei kind of held for Telkom Business?
Significantly, I just came out of a session now where we did a cooperation MOU with China Telecom and Huawei that facilitated it for us. And we have been engaging with CT because you have to understand, like the gentleman from CT said, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go in a group and with friends. So we're basically trying to establish and leverage of the friendships and the partnership relationships we have, not just in South Africa, but globally as well. We understand that OEMs like Huawei are critical to this endeavor. I mean, we have other OEMs inside the business, but they've been a critical part in actually help develop this partner relationship from not just the technology, but also from a way of work perspective.
And are you perhaps learning any lessons as far as China's maturity and kind of taking those lessons and perhaps applying it here?
In South Africa, we tend to think in survival mode. Whereas if you go to China and you actually see what's available, it's very much in a thrive mode. That we should think in scale, that we shouldn't think as second-class global citizens. We should actually think of ourselves entitled to what's available elsewhere. We need to onboard the ability to think globally, think at scale, and implement elsewhere, not just South Africa, but across the country. Make it available to us, because otherwise we'll always have our GDP per capita trailing everybody else. We have the youth, we have that youth dividend, the ability of the youth to actually come through and actually get, where the other countries are struggling with declining populations aging. We actually have the opposite.
Sure.
But we have to provide the facilities and capabilities. And key to that is business. If you think about, in South Africa, there's a stat that I always like to think about is 40%, 95% of enterprises are actually small and medium businesses, but they make up 40% of the GDP. And they tend to be underserviced, and we have to think about them as inclusively as part of the economy and grow the economy. America's growth to a large extent is driven by SME business. We know the big Fortune 500s, but if you look at the underlying economy, what grows America is actually that.
Yeah, that's the backbone.
Yeah, it's the backbone of the economy, and we need to actually feed that backbone, seed it, harvest it, and actually make sure that it's not seen to be lacking for resources or operational capability.
Understood. So, you segue quite nicely in terms of Telkom Business and Services. Perhaps you can just unpack a little bit for us, One Telkom, kind of that platform, what it means.
So One Telkom is a very much a dream that has been brought forth by our group CEO, Rami Takamong. And that sense is that we always operated as individual entities. We're now trying to create a seamless, unified approach to the way we approach a customer. The customer sees us, he comes in through one door and not through multiple doors. We're able to deal with the customer in a simplistic manner, face to face, that it's more than just a series of transactions. It becomes a strategic relationship with the customer, strategic collaboration with the customer. And that's what One Telkom, the ability, whether you're a small and medium micro or you're a large enterprise, to create that seamless, unified approach in actually dealing with Telkom, that when we provide solutions, we're seen as a partner and not just a transactional vendor.
Understood. And you mentioned kind of it services a wide breadth of different types of organizations. But do you have any idea of in terms of the makeup, which kinds of organizations are actually making use of the service more? Are SMEs kind of uptaking, or is it more your large organizations that are really using it?
So if I look at within my domain, the Telkom Business domain, we're still very much a large enterprise, public sector denominated in terms of just revenue splits. But in terms of customer split, the volumes are still sitting within the small and medium business. I also believe there's a missing middle in between that's being serviced. It's not really being serviced because you cater for the volume business, you cater for the large enterprise, but you're not really catering for the value business in between that segment that maybe is 50 buckies on the road and it's a delivery, or he's a plumber with 20 plumbers on the road. So we're trying to create a segmented approach for various sizes of businesses, that the ability when they come through the front door, they come through the right door, they get catered for in the correct door. And then obviously backing that up with strong service delivery. The ability to actually say, if things, we don't wait for the customer to tell us something go wrong, we will tell the customer forwards. And those kind of things to make sure that the customer sees us, doesn't actually see and feel us. That's my dream as Telkom Business. They mustn't know we're there.
As frictionless as possible.
As frictionless as possible. We should be in the background, that we shouldn't create issues. Unless, there will be breakages, there will be fiber cuts, there will be vandalism, stuff that happens, but build a redundant network as possible. And make sure that where you aren't able to, the redundancies don't kick in, and you're able to deal with the customer from a communication perspective. And that's the dream that we're trying to recapture from a Telkom Business perspective. Make sure that the customer doesn't feel us, see us. We mustn't know who's there. The only time he knows is when the debit order goes off.
So I'm guessing Telkom Business wants to be like a one-stop shop in terms of enablement.
Enable 100%. It will always be linked back to connectivity. We will never just sell something that's divorced from connectivity. It will always be either cloud-based, IoT-based. There will be underpinning connectivity. There might be some IT services on top, but we'll always find a way to link it back to what's our core DNA.
Understood. So I wanted to perhaps think about the next few months, maybe next 12 months. What is Telkom Business really focusing on in terms of projects, plans, anything that you can potentially mention at this stage?
So for me, it's focusing on basic service delivery. I want to make sure the service delivery is rock solid. That we have no issues. The customer, we shouldn't be popping up in Hello Peter on Google forums or Facebook forums. That for me, the customer game comes to the frictionless ability. Once you're walking through the door, you mustn't know we exist in your life. You must just know the service work. And then the ability for us to sell up and above that, that's probably going forward. We still see value in the old traditional voice through hybrid PABXs, where you don't have to upfront costs from deploying a PABX in your business, because there's still customers that demand voice on their premises. They're not everybody sitting on a WhatsApp call or a FaceTime call. We're trying to make sure that that those solutions for the customer that they want specifically related to that is available to that, but without incurring a massive upfront capital cost. We've been very good at that, because one thing Telkom has is a strong balance sheet, so you can leverage its balance sheet to actually enable its customers. So to remove the burden of strong, the heavy burden of upfront capex, that's what we're trying to actually focus on. Service delivery, deals that allow customers not to have to worry about capex. It becomes an operational model for them. And then once with the service delivery, the hybrid PABXs, and there's even customers still demand on-prem PABXs, if you believe, but they want it, they still demand. So we're still able to service all of that upfront. So, and then what we've actually let go over the last few years is the distribution network, our dealer network. We're rebuilding our dealer network to actually have a dealer network that's ubiquitous across the country. No customer should, ideally, one phone call away, but maybe two calls away from getting to a specific person that will deal with their customer's requirements. So that's the focus for me: distribution, service delivery, and product.
All right. Is there any kind of time frame in terms of that kind of rebuild?
So within the next, I'm giving myself 6 to 12 months on the service delivery. Distribution, we've actually gotten quite far. The teams have actually built a strong distribution network. All we're doing now is just broadening and entrenching and spreading our further tentacles beyond the 4 major metros. So we see ourselves 6 to 12 months of being pretty robust in those areas, and just reasserting the Telkom Business brand. The Telkom Business brand, to a large extent, we haven't really pushed it forward. It still, surprisingly, after all these years, still has equity. Customers still recognize it, even though it hasn't been one of the forefront brands in the Telkom group. When you speak to customers, they're still aware of the Telkom Business brand, and it's a trusted brand. It's a brand that's not a newfangled brand that just popped up on yesterday. So everybody knows Telkom. And then Telkom Business linked to that just gives it a bit of credibility, extra credibility.
Yeah, by the sounds of it, the time frames make it sound like next year's Africa Tech Festival is a perfect time to kind of reintroduce yourselves.
Exactly. I was actually thinking about that. We were actually thinking about that last night when we were looking at that. We got to be upfront maybe for the next session, next year's event, and be out there.
Cool. Something to look forward to, I think.
Hope so.
So I think it kind of brings our discussion to a close. Is perhaps anything else you wanted to mention?
Telkom Business is here. We leverage off the power of the group. We don't see ourselves as just a small service provider from a business perspective, an ISP. We see ourselves as a part of the holistic group, leveraging of the power of OpenServe, power of PCX, the ability of the Telkom group to actually provide services as cost efficient and value compelling to the customer.
Sure.
And we're open for business.
Great stuff. I think exciting times ahead.
Yep, I agree.
So that was Hasnain Mutlaka, the CCO for Telkom Business at Africa Tech Festival 2025. Thank you.